All right, so we're diving into selling at Rob Roy Botha's Hill Retirement Village
Hmm.
and, well, you're making sure you're prepped for the resale process.
Hmm.
We've got a bunch of documents here, like the agreement of sale and addendums and annexures and uh, even some of those house rules.
Yeah.
Don't worry, though, we're going to navigate it all.
What's really important to understand up front is that Rob Roy is a bit different than just like, traditional home ownership.
Okay, so can you explain this right of occupation thing? It
Yeah,
seems kind of key
exactly.
to understanding how things work.
Instead of, owning the unit outright, you're buying the right to live there.
Okay.
So upon death or leaving the village, that right reverts back to Rob Roy Botha's Hill Lifestyle Village,
Hmm.
which is Plitty Ltd.
Okay.
This has some pretty big implications for how resales work, and especially for your refund.
Gotcha. So if the market booms and my unit's value skyrockets,
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily get all that profit back.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. Let's actually look at Annexure D, which is the refund calculation example, to
Okay.
see how this plays out with real numbers.
Give me the numbers. I'm all about seeing how this works, practically.
Okay, so let's say you bought your unit for R1,000 and you sell it for R1,500,000.
Okay.
Sounds like a good profit, right?
Yeah, on the surface it does, but I have a feeling those deductions are going to be lurking around the corner.
You got it.
Okay.
So first, there's the commission, which is capped at 6% plus VAT,
Okay.
which in this example comes to R103,500.
Mm,
Then there's the resale levy,
okay.
a hefty 5% going towards the levy stabilization fund, which adds another R75,000.
I'm starting to see where this is going.
We also need to factor in R30,000 for refurbishment to bring the unit back to its original state, and another R25,000 for levies that Rob Roy might have covered while the unit was empty.
Okay.
So that brings us to a total of R233,500 in deductions.
So that leaves R1,266,500.
Yeah.
Still seems pretty good.
Hold on, we're not done yet.
No.
Remember, you only bought the right to occupy.
Right.
So while you do get back your initial R1,000,000, Rob Roy also deducts 50% of any profit above that.
There it is, that right of occupation coming back into play.
Exactly.
Right.
So in this case, your profit is R266,500, and Rob Roy takes half, which is R133,250.
Mm-hmm.
Add that back to your original purchase price, and your final refund is R1,133,250.
Okay, so I do benefit from some of the appreciation,
Right.
but not the full amount. It's
Mhm.
important to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And this gets even more interesting when you consider that any improvements or alterations you make
Yeah.
might not automatically increase your refund.
So if I splurge on a fancy new kitchen,
Yeah.
it's not a guarantee to translate into a bigger refund later on.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Rob Roy has the right to either retain those improvements and incorporate them into their refurbishment costs, or require you to restore the unit back to its original condition.
So personalizing my unit is a balancing act between, creating the space that I love and potentially impacting my refund later.
Precisely. And speaking of costs, let's talk about the different ways you can pay for your unit.
Okay.
So you have two main options. You can either pay the full amount up front.
Or put down a deposit and secure the rest with the guarantee tied to selling my existing property outside Rob Roy.
Exactly.
Okay, so they offer some flexibility there.
Yeah, and it's important to factor in those additional costs, like the 5% transfer levy on the purchase price, when considering your options.
Okay, so I need to consider those upfront costs
Yeah.
and the potential impact on my refund later.
It's about seeing the whole picture.
Right.
And it's also worth remembering that monthly levies continue for a month after you vacate the unit.
Okay.
So those can add up, especially if there's a gap between leaving and the final sale.
All right, so lots to think about regarding the financials.
Yeah.
But what about day-to-day life?
Yeah.
What can I expect from living at Rob Roy?
Well, that's where those house rules come into play. They give you a glimpse into the unique culture and values of the community, and some of them might surprise you.
Bring on the surprises.
Well, for starters, they're very specific about what you can flush down the toilet,
Okay.
especially when it comes to pet waste.
Okay.
Apparently, it's a big no-no to toss it in the regular rubbish.
Hold on, so I'm supposed to flush my dog's business.
You got it.
Wow.
Seems they're quite concerned about protecting their sewage system.
Okay.
And on the topic of being environmentally conscious, they're very strict about recycling and where and how laundry can be dried. No rogue clotheslines popping up.
So it's a community that cares about the environment and has systems in place to maintain things.
Right.
But what about the people?
Yeah.
Is it all about rules, or is there a sense of community?
Well, the agreement emphasizes residents displaying courtesy and respect towards each other and staff.
Okay.
They even mention a dress code, which is smart casual for the Montrose dining room,
Oh, wow.
on Sundays and special occasions.
So a bit of formality mixed in with eco-consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like an interesting combination.
It is.
What other facilities do they offer?
Well, you've got your usual suspects, like the King James Community Center with a restaurant and pub and entertainment,
Okay.
along with the library and lounges.
Okay.
But they also have a heated indoor swimming pool, a gym, and even a 2-lane AstroTurf bowling green.
Wow. Sounds like they cater to a pretty active crowd.
It is. And what about if my needs change and I need more assistance later on?
Well, that's one thing that sets Rob Roy apart.
Okay.
They have the Rob Roy Care Center right on the property, offering various levels of care for residents.
Okay, so if my health situation changes, I could potentially transition to the care center without having to leave the village entirely.
Right.
That's a big plus.
It offers a sense of security,
Definitely.
knowing there's a continuum of care available.
Okay, so we've covered the financials and those house rules.
Yeah.
And even some of the facilities.
Yeah.
It's clear there's a lot to consider. Absolutely. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how those house rules really shape daily life at Rob Roy and delve into some of the more, unique aspects that you might not expect.
Yeah, I can't wait. So we've got a pretty good handle on the big picture, the financials, the general vibe now. Let's zoom in on daily life at Rob Roy.
Okay.
What are those surprising details hidden within these house rules?
One that caught my eye was about those independent facilities, like the
Okay.
care center, the central kitchen, even the hairdresser.
Mm-hmm.
They all come with separate charges on top of the monthly levies.
So it's not a completely all-inclusive package.
Right.
Makes sense, though. Those are more specialized services.
Right. And while most facilities are covered by the levy,
Yeah.
there are a few exceptions.
Okay, like what?
Remember those coin-operated laundry machines?
Right.
Those would be extra.
Okay.
As would any potential surcharge for running the generator during power outages.
Okay, so little things to factor in when budgeting.
Right.
But what about the specific rules for the facilities? Do any stand out as particularly Rob Roy-ish?
Well, the laundry room etiquette guidelines are quite detailed.
Really?
They even have a rule against putting someone else's clothes in the dryer.
Interesting.
Apparently, certain garments might shrink or get damaged.
So it's all about respecting each other's laundry and avoiding any accidental shrinkage incidents.
Precisely, and there's a gentle reminder to clean the lint trap after each use,
Of course.
which is always good practice anyway.
Yeah. Now I'm curious about that heated pool they mentioned. Any quirky rules there?
The water temperature is strictly maintained at 32 degrees Celsius using a heat pump.
Okay.
They even ask residents not to adjust the settings and to report any temperature inconsistencies to reception.
Sounds like they've got the perfect temperature dialed in.
Exactly.
No need to bring a thermometer to the pool then.
And speaking of maintaining things, they have a strict pool cleaning schedule.
Okay.
Backwashing every Wednesday night and vacuuming every Friday.
Wow.
Hygiene is clearly a priority.
Makes sense, especially with a shared pool.
Yeah.
Any rules about who can take a dip?
Babies and toddlers and nappies are strictly prohibited.
Okay.
I imagine that's to prevent any E. coli outbreaks and keep the pool safe for everyone.
Smart move, safety first, especially when it comes to shared spaces. What about the gym? Any rules beyond the standard no dropping weights?
Well, they do ask residents to avoid working out while still wet from the pool.
Okay.
Probably a good idea to prevent any slips and slides on those treadmills.
Safety always comes first, and it's good to see they encourage energy conservation
Right.
by reminding everyone to switch off the equipment at the socket after use.
Now, remember that standby generator we talked about?
Yeah.
It's a valuable resource during power outages, but
Yeah.
it does come with a potential cost.
Right, the management committee can impose a surcharge on residents' levies to cover the fuel costs for running the generator.
Exactly.
So it's a shared expense since it benefits everyone in the community.
Exactly, and even something as simple as the post is well organized. They have individual boxes for each unit conveniently located in the reception area.
So they've thought about the practicalities of everyday life. But what about personalization? Can I put my own stamp on my unit at Rob Roy?
That's where things get a little more controlled.
Oh,
They're quite specific about what alterations or additions you can make.
okay.
Remember, they prioritize maintaining the original design and value of the units.
So no knocking down walls to create that open plan living space I've always dreamed of?
Probably not any significant changes require written consent from Rob Roy, and they're unlikely to approve anything too drastic.
Okay, so I need to temper my inner interior designer. But what about simple things like painting the walls? Can I swap out that beige for something a bit bolder?
So while technically interior painting is the resident's responsibility,
Yeah.
they do mention that any externally visible structures need to be of a standard type approved by the management committee.
Okay.
It's possible they have similar guidelines for paint colors,
Right.
so it's best to check first.
So no lime green exterior to match my vibrant personality then.
Probably best to avoid any paint-related surprises.
Noted. And while they don't specifically mention light fixtures,
Yeah.
I'd recommend double-checking with their management committee before making any changes there, too.
Right.
They might have specific requirements.
They might.
So sticking with the original fixtures is the safest bet. But what about the kitchen and bathrooms? Can I at least update those a little?
Major overhauls are unlikely to get the green light.
Oh.
They want to maintain the value of the units and avoid any disruptions caused by extensive plumbing or electrical work.
Okay, no ripping out the cabinets then. But can I make smaller changes like updating the hardware or faucets?
Those sorts of cosmetic updates should be fine.
Okay.
And remember, sometimes those smaller details make the biggest difference in creating a space that feels like your own.
Right, so some room for personalization.
Yeah.
But within limits, what about the outdoor spaces? Can I flex my gardening muscles?
Residents with cottages and garden apartments can create gardens in the designated areas, but they must consult with the management committee before planting anything.
So no rogue sunflowers popping up unexpectedly. They want to maintain a cohesive look, I imagine.
Exactly. And here's a quirky detail. They use gray water, which is recycled water from the sewage treatment plant for most of the garden taps.
Wow.
So it's eco-friendly but not drinkable.
Interesting. So watering the plants helps with sustainability efforts?
Right.
What about pets? Can Fido come along for the ride?
The pet policy is pretty specific.
Okay.
One small dog is allowed in garden apartments and cottages,
Okay.
but only with written permission and subject to a few conditions. No other pets are permitted.
Okay, so it's a dog-friendly community within reason. What kind of conditions are we talking about?
Well, obviously the dog needs to be well-behaved and controlled at all times, no excessive barking or chasing after squirrels,
Right.
and they must be kept on a lead when out and about in the village.
Makes sense, keeping things peaceful and orderly for everyone. Anything else that's particularly Rob Roy?
Remember that unusual rule about flushing pet waste down the toilet? That applies here too.
Wow.
No leaving any presents for the gardeners to deal with.
I see. Protecting that sensitive sewage system again. It's starting to feel like a recurring theme.
It definitely is, and they emphasize that dogs can't be left alone in the units for long periods.
Yeah.
So any day trips or overnight stays require some doggy daycare planning.
Okay, so pet ownership comes with responsibilities.
Yeah.
Just like in any community. What about safety and security? That's always a top concern, especially in a retirement village.
Rob Roy takes security very seriously.
Right.
The entire village is surrounded by electrified fencing, and they have 24-hour security patrols.
Okay, so the perimeter is well protected. What about access within the village?
They have a strict access control system.
Okay.
Residents and regular visitors get access discs, but everyone else has to go through a more thorough process.
So no unexpected guests just popping in for a cup of tea.
Not without a bit of security protocol. Visitors have to be processed by the guards, who then contact the resident to confirm they're expected. Then their vehicle registration and driver's license are scanned and stored in the system.
Wow, that's quite comprehensive.
It is. And they even scan the visitor's vehicle again upon exit.
Wow.
Plus, they lower the roller shutter gates between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m.,
Okay.
funneling all traffic through the service gate with its ever-watchful security guards.
So they've got multiple layers of security in place to ensure residents feel safe and secure. What about noise levels that can sometimes be an issue in close-knit communities?
Right. The house rules emphasize being considerate of your neighbors and avoiding any excessive noise.
Okay.
They even have guidelines for playing musical instruments, listening to music, or watching TV, all at reasonable volumes, of course.
So no late-night jam sessions or blasting opera at full volume.
Right. And while smoking is allowed in private gardens and individual units,
Yeah.
Rob Roy is generally a smoke-free zone. They can even require residents to install additional extractor fans if smoke becomes a problem.
Okay, so fresh air for everyone. What about if I have visitors, especially those of the younger, more energetic variety?
They emphasize that residents are responsible for their visitors' conduct, including children.
Okay.
They should be supervised at all times and encouraged to play in designated areas.
So no wild games of tag through the hallways.
Exactly, and the management committee makes it clear they aren't liable for any injuries that might occur while children are playing on the property. So parents and grandparents, it's up to you to keep those little ones in check.
All right, so they've really thought about creating a harmonious and well-regulated environment. It's clear they have a system for everything.
They definitely do. We've covered a lot of ground here, from laundry etiquette to visitor protocols, but there are still some more unique aspects of life at Rob Roy to uncover.
I'm all ears. What other quirks and details have you discovered within those house rules?
Well, for starters, they seem to have a particular aversion to mobility scooters being stored or charged in the passageways.
Okay, that makes sense. From a safety and accessibility standpoint, you wouldn't want a scooter traffic jam in the hallways.
Exactly. And while they encourage a sense of community,
Yeah.
they also prioritize tranquility.
Okay.
There are specific rules about noise levels and behavior, even limiting visitors in communal areas after a certain hour.
So no impromptu late-night parties in the community center.
Probably not. It's all about striking that balance between social interaction and ensuring everyone can enjoy a peaceful environment.
So it's community that values both togetherness and a certain level of peace and quiet. Sounds like a unique combination.
It definitely is. And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll wrap things up by highlighting the key takeaways and offering some food for thought as you weigh your options.
All right, so we've journeyed through like all the ins and outs of reselling at Rob Roy.
Right.
The unique ownership, the financials, the house rules, and even some of the quirks that make this community, you know what it is.
Yeah.
Now let's like zoom out and connect the dots.
Okay.
What does it all mean for someone considering selling their unit?
The biggest takeaway is that this right of occupation model, significantly impacts your refund.
Yeah.
While you do benefit from some appreciation, it's not like the full market value increase that you would see with traditional ownership.
So if my primary goal is maximizing profit,
Yeah.
Rob Roy's model might not be the best fit.
Yeah, it seems like their focus is more on creating a stable, long-term community.
Right. And those house rules, while sometimes detailed, really highlight that community focus.
Mm-hmm.
They're all about ensuring a harmonious, well-maintained environment where residents feel safe and respected.
Absolutely.
It's interesting how like those seemingly small details, like the dress code for Sunday dinners
Yeah.
or, the specific instructions for pet waste,
Right.
really paint a picture of the community's values.
They do. And while some might find the rules, a bit restrictive,
Yeah.
they clearly contribute to a sense of order and consideration for others, which many find appealing.
Right. And it's not just about rules. It's about creating opportunities for connection.
Right.
The shared facilities, the social events, even the transport service.
Right.
It all points to a community that values interaction and belonging.
Absolutely. And they've clearly thought about those practical challenges that come with downsizing and moving to a retirement village.
Mm-hmm.
The Stority Guidelines, for example, show they recognize the need for residents to personalize their space while maintaining a cohesive aesthetic.
And even those seemingly quirky rules like banning mobility scooters in the hallways
Yeah.
highlight their focus on safety and accessibility for everyone.
Right. It's about anticipating potential issues and creating a system that works smoothly for the entire community.
So someone considering selling needs to weigh those financial considerations
Right.
against the unique lifestyle and sense of community that Rob Roy offers.
Exactly. It's about asking yourself, what are my priorities?
Uh.
What kind of environment do I want to live in? And does Rob Roy's model align with my long-term goals?
Right. It's a personal decision with no right or wrong answer.
Exactly. And remember, the best way to get a true feel for a place is to experience it firsthand.
Yeah.
Take a tour chat with residents and see if it resonates with you.
So that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Rob Roy, both as Hill Retirement Lifestyle Village. We've covered a lot of ground, but hopefully you've come away with a better understanding of what life and reselling at Rob Roy is all about.
We've explored the unique ownership model, we've dissected those interesting house rules, and uncovered the many factors that, contribute to the community's character.
And remember, knowledge is power, especially when making big decisions.
Right.
As you continue your journey, consider those unique aspects we talked about and whether they align with your vision for this next chapter.
And if you find yourself facing other life decisions that require a little deep diving, well, where to find us. Until then, keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, there's always something new to learn.